So we've all been so caught up in the disease that shall not be named that I started thinking, what was going on around us that we were being distracted from? I mean, there's the obvious things, the complete and utter collapse of the Democratic primary, the almost guaranteed nomination of Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't look good, and anybody who's not willing to say that he doesn't look healthy just for political reasons or ego is, I don't know, man. Joe Biden isn't healthy. They need to leave that man alone. And it just serves certain people to have a vassal, an empty shell of a man. If you think about it, to the most psychopathic of our elite, a man with Alzheimer's in the presidency would be perfect for them. It's depressing. But I did find another event that was going on besides the one that I've been covering in my past few videos. Even though, the disease that shall not be named is a live event, according to some people. This is a live event that's happening here as well. What am I talking about? Well, there is a multilateral pullback from the Russia narrative. And it's interesting that it's happening on more than one front. And it makes me feel like we are going to see some prosecutions. Sidney Powell was speaking at Hillsdale College, and she really got me fired up. I'll play a bit of that in a little bit. But so part of the pullback from the Russian narrative is coming from the DOJ. And what they've had to do is they've had to drop the prosecution of the companies that they accused of running the Russian troll farms on Facebook that supposedly affected the election. Now, listen, this was a pathetic an attempt to affect the election that was in the indictment to begin with. And if you haven't read the Mueller report, I recommend that you do, because what these companies are even accused of doing, like Cardi B could influence more people in a single tweet than this operation would in 15 years of running. It was pathetic. And when you actually go look at some of the ads, they're not even all pro-Trump. I mean, I'm getting in the weeds here, but so this company that the entire Russian narrative is built off of, that ran this disinformation campaign on Facebook, they were announced, very loudly and proudly by the Mueller team, and it was all over the news, and this was during the height of the Russia boogaloo. And now, as of a few days ago, the DOJ abruptly drops. Now, as of a few days ago, the DOJ abruptly drops their once heralded prosecution of Russia troll farm initiated by Mueller. In a striking and unexpected abandonment of a once heralded prosecution initiated by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, the Justice Department moved Monday to drop charges against 2 Russian companies that were accused of funding a social media meme campaign to further the strategic goal to sow discord in the U.S. political system, including the 2016 presidential election. Late Monday, with jury selection in the case set to begin in just 2 weeks, a federal judge granted the DOJ's motion to kill the prosecution for several counts of conspiring to defraud U.S. agencies tasked with combating election interference. The government acknowledged the Russian companies were never likely to actually face punishment anyways. Let me tell you that again. The government acknowledged the Russian companies were never likely to actually face punishment anyways, and cited possible national security risks with going forward with the trial. So, it was a PR stunt. The Russian troll farm in the Mueller report was a PR stunt. They're pulling back from it now. And it's funny because when he announced that he was announcing these indictments of these Russians and these Russian companies, I was like, what would be hilarious is if Putin was like, go down there, insist on discovery. I was like, why would they do that? What if this Russian company is like, nah, we didn't do that. I want discovery. Then what does Mueller do? And I remember I think I have like a website or two. Yeah, so here we are in May of 2018. That's exactly what they did. They showed up and they demanded discovery. It says Russian company charged in Mueller probe seeks grand jury materials. Well, from the second that they did that, the DOJ was going to have to announce they were dropping charges. This is that May article. In a court filing on Monday, lawyers for Concord Management and Consulting LLC said Mueller had wrongfully accused the company of a, quote, make-believe crime in a political effort by the special counsel to, quote, justify his own existence by indicting, quote, a Russian, any Russian. And this is during that same time period. There's the Daily Caller calling balls and strikes. Washington, D.C. Lawyers for Russian company Concord Management and Consulting LLC formally entered a not guilty plea in federal court Monday in a case special counsel Robert Mueller probably never thought would happen. Mueller, weathering significant criticism that his Russian collusion case was thin, unveiled a grandiose indictment February 16th against 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies. The 13 Russians in question were charged with waging information warfare in the United States, interfering with the 2016 presidential election, and conspiracy to defraud the United States. Mueller generated headlines with his February indictment safe in the knowledge that the 13 Russians were beyond jurisdiction. Therefore, there would be no trial. Only sensational Russian collusion accusations. Mueller may now have to try the case, and Concord's lawyers have put the special counsel on notice. The Russian company's lawyers intend to invoke discovery to obtain U.S. intelligence about what they knew of Russian activities. I guess Mueller thought it was a freebie for sure. Former federal prosecutor Andrew C. McCarthy told the Daily Caller News Foundation after the court proceeding he thought it could make this association of Russia collusion and it would never be challenged in court. So, Mueller releases this indictment. The people who are already very, well versed in the Mueller team, who is formerly the Enron team and the Uranium One team, we know what's about to happen. And this all starts fitting the MO, making up crimes and putting out charges that they know are never going to be realized. So for all the fluff, the DOJ has now had to officially drop the charges against those companies. I sure wish those 13 Russians would come down here and demand discovery. I think it'd be hilarious. That's never going to happen, but... So today the DOJ backs off of charging those Russian companies. There was no troll farm. Okay? There was no Russian troll farm. So get this, at the same time that the DOJ is backing away from the Russia collusion narrative and basically completely nixed the entire idea of a Russian troll farm, there's movement on the CrowdStrike front. This is at the Gateway Pundit. CrowdStrike and their PR firm now distance themselves from Russia's link to WikiLeaks. Remember, the FBI never examined the DNC servers. Okay? CrowdStrike claimed to have analyzed the DNC servers and then made disk images of them and sent those to the FBI to be looked at. Let's just read the article. For more than 3 years of the mainstream media promoted the biggest fraud in U.S. history, that the Russians hacked the DNC's emails and gave the emails they hacked to WikiLeaks, who then leaked the emails before the 2016 election. Now suddenly, the firm at the center of this fraud, CrowdStrike, is taking a step back from their previous actions related to the entire sham. For years now, the FBI and Mueller investigation claimed that Russia hacked the DNC during the lead-up to 2016 election. This is central to the Russia collusion narrative. President Trump indicated that he knew CrowdStrike was at the center of the Russia collusion scam when he made his infamous phone call with the Ukraine's President Zelensky. The president reportedly said the following. I'm going to read the first part of this because a lot of people don't know this. This is the president. I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of your wealthy people. The server, they say Ukraine has it. There are a lot of things that went on. The whole situation. I think you're surrounding yourself with some of the same people. I would like to have Attorney General call you or your people, and I would like you to get to the bottom of it. As you saw yesterday, the whole nonsense ended with a very poor performance by a man named Robert Mueller, an incompetent performance. But they say a lot of it started with Ukraine. Whatever you can do, it's very important that you do it, if that's possible. The president was interested in CrowdStrike, not the Bidens. Notice that entire paragraph. He didn't mention the Bidens one time. The Bidens only came up after the president had the discussion above, and the Bidens were brought up by Ukrainian leader Zelensky. This must have hit a nerve, because just a couple of weeks ago on February 16, 2020, 60 Minutes had a report authored by Scott Peely regarding CrowdStrike's claims that Russia hacked the DNC in 2016. Peely and 60 Minutes made an effort to clear CrowdStrike's name in their piece, where the far-left media outlet suggested the Gateway pundit published conspiracy theories and flashed an image of a 2017 The Gateway Pundit report. 60 Minutes went on to push the discredited Trump-Russia conspiracy. Peely from 60 Minutes used former anti-Trump ambassador Bill Taylor, that was the ambassador that testified at the Ukrainian nonsense. He looked like a darn fool. Anyways, so in this 60 Minutes article, they're using that guy to talk about what Trump should have done. Yeah, it's amazing how people don't see through this. Taylor claims he knew of no connection between CrowdStrike and the Ukraine. Peely then shared the following in his report. Robert Johnston dealt directly with the FBI as an investigator of the DNC hack for CrowdStrike, a leading cybersecurity company hired by the Democrats. He told us the FBI didn't physically examine the DNC servers because CrowdStrike gave the Bureau copies of the data from the servers. If there is a server or a computer system of any kind that's involved in the incident, you can take an exact bit-for-bit digital copy of what's on that system. Now that digital copy is just as good as having the real thing, Johnston said. As far as you know, the FBI got what it needed and what it wanted, Peely asked Johnston. Exactly, and the evidence of that is you don't hear the FBI complaining, Johnston said. Because that's evidence, right? He's right. The former senior official familiar with the investigation told us the FBI would have preferred to work alongside CrowdStrike's investigators, but the Democratic National Committee decided to give the Bureau digital copies of its servers instead. The official told us this was, quote, acceptable. In fact, even typical in FBI investigations. But this was not accurate, and it was pathetic for 60 Minutes to spread the ridiculous CrowdStrike statements. And that's true. When the FBI wants a server, it's going to come get the damn server. Who is CrowdStrike? We reported that CrowdStrike is related to Ukraine, and this is through Ukrainian billionaire longtime contributor to the Clinton Foundation, Viktor Pinchuk. We also know CrowdStrike is connected to James Clapper and the Atlantic Group. Pinchuk serves on the International Advisory Board of a Washington-based think tank called the Atlantic Council. Also serving on the International Advisory Board of the Atlantic Council is James Clapper, who served as Obama's Director of National Intelligence. Funnily enough, Bongino discovered that Chief Technology Officer of the only company that investigated the hacking of the DNC servers and quickly determined it was the Russians is a non-resident senior fellow in cybersecurity at the Atlantic Council. His name is Dmitry Alperovich, owner of CrowdStrike. We also know that in July 2015, Google invested $100 million into CrowdStrike. Google Capital, the 2-year-old growth equity arm of search giant Google, announced its first security investment on Monday morning. The fund has pumped $100 million into cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. The new infusion represents a Series C round for the Irvine, California-based company, bringing its total funding raised to date to $156 million. So, Google gave them 100 of their 156 million. Holes in CrowdStrike's claims. There are many holes with the Russia hacked the DNC emails claim, too much of what has already been posted here at the Gateway Pundit. Several individuals previously shared that they have sources who claim the DNC servers were never examined by CrowdStrike. After speaking with my FBI sources and the New York Times reporter with direct knowledge of the handling of the DNC server, it's true. There was no direct examination or physical custody of the DNC server. An image, i.e. copy of the server, was examined only, according to Tony Schaefer. It was also uncovered in the Roger Stone case that CrowdStrike gave the U.S. government 3 draft reports on the so-called hack by Russia, which were full of redactions, and the FBI just took their word for it. It was also reported that the DOJ never received the unredacted copies of CrowdStrike's reports. The DNC lawyer provided the CrowdStrike reports to the government. He said the redacted parts weren't relevant to the investigation. The FBI never looked into it. Full DOJ response here, according to Technofog. And I'll put this in the comment section, and you guys can go in here and click all these links. Applebaum's argument. Cyber expert Yakov Applebaum says 60 Minutes and CrowdStrike's claims are completely false. If CrowdStrike gave the FBI any data, it was drive images. We don't even know which ones. This did not include memory dumps, network pocket captures, firewall activity, etc. This additional data is crucial and should have been examined in real time by the FBI. If indeed any drive images were given to the FBI, these would have been contaminated because they continued to use the drives for weeks after the alleged hack. CrowdStrike was completely wrong, and most likely intentionally, about the Russian hack of the Ukrainian artillery allegation, and we know for a fact that they used the same forensic techniques to reach that conclusion as they did on the DNC hack. Applebaum posted a report in January 2019 with information basically proving that the DNC was not hacked by the Russians. Applebaum's first argument is this. According to the WAPO, using CrowdStrike, DOJ, and their other usual hush-hush government sources in the know, the attack was perpetrated by a Russian unit led by Lieutenant Captain Nikolai Kozacek, who allegedly crafted a malware called X-Agent and used it to get into the network and install keystroke loggers on several PCs. This allowed them to see what the employees were typing and take screenshots of employees' computers. This is pretty detailed information, but if this was the case, then how did the DOJ learn all of these details and use them in the indictments without the FBI ever forensically evaluating the DNC HRC computers? And since when does the DOJ, an organization that only speaks the language of indictments, use hearsay and third parties like the British national Matt Tate, a former GCHQ collector and connoisseur of all things related to Russia collusion, CrowdStrike, or any other evidence lacking chain of custody certification as a primary source for prosecution? This is absolutely true. So what they're saying is, in this 60 Minutes interview, they're saying, oh, the FBI was completely happy getting just these images. And they're saying, absolutely not. The images did not contain all of the information, and specifically crucial information. And then on top of that, the servers were used for weeks after the alleged hacks, so they would have been corrupted. And of course, it gives time for them to remove anything that they want to remove before they make images and give the images to CrowdStrike and the FBI. So they're doing this 60 Minutes interview, and they're trying to cover their rear end because the reality is they were only given disk images. CrowdStrike was only given disk images, and they passed those images on to the FBI. The only people who ever had the servers were the DNC and Hillary Clinton. We don't know where they are now. A second point by Applebaum is that 3 of the Russian GRU officers on the DOJ wanted by the FBI list were allegedly working concurrently on multiple non-related projects like interfering with the 2016 United States elections, both HRC and DNC, while at the same time they were also allegedly hacking anti-doping agencies. The same guys were working both projects, which is all but impossible. Do we really know if they are even real people or even real Russians? Applebaum argues. The fact that the 3 had multiple concurrent high-impact and high-visibility project assignments is odd because this is not how typical offensive cyber intelligence teams operate. These units tend to be compartmentalized. They are assigned to a specific mission, and the task force stays together for the entire duration of the project. Next, Applebaum questions the Mueller gang's assertion that the hacker named Guccifer 2.0 was a Russian. Any evidence that Guccifer 2.0 is a Russian should be evaluated while keeping these points in mind. He used a Russian VPN service to cloak his IP address, but did not use Tor. Using a proxy to conduct cyber operations is standard operating procedure in all intelligence law enforcement agencies. He used the AOL email service that captured and forwarded his IP address and the same AOL email to contact various media outlets on the same day of the attack. This is so overt and amateurish that it's unlikely to be a mistake and seems like a deliberate attempt to leave traceable breadcrumbs. In June 21st, 2016, Lorenzo Franceschi Bishop... This is a really hard one. Let's just call him Lorenzo. In June 21st, 2016, Lorenzo from Vice Motherboard interviewed a person who identified himself as Guccifer 2.0. During their online chat session, the individual claimed that he was Romanian. His poor Romanian language skills were later used to unmask his Russian identity. I'm not a scientific linguist, nor do I even know where to find one in my life if my life depended on it, but I'm certain that you can't reliably determine nationality based on someone impersonating another language or from the use of fake metadata in files. This elaborate theory also has the obvious flaw of assuming that the Russian intelligence services are dumb enough to show up to an interview posing as Romanians without actually being able to read and write fluent Romanian. After providing a couple more examples of why the Russia story doesn't stick, Applebaum closes with this. The bottom line is that if we want to go beyond the speculative trivia, the pseudoscience, and the bombastic unverified claims, we have to ask the real tough questions. Mainly, is Guccifer 2.0 even the real attacker? And how did he circumvent all of the logs during several weeks of repeated visits while downloading close to 2 gigabytes of data? Most importantly, we know that WikiLeaks has stated numerous times that Russia did not provide them with the emails that they leaked in 2016, and Julian Assange has stated that WikiLeaks had nothing to do with Russia. But of course, the Mueller gang never interviewed WikiLeaks or Julian Assange in an effort to determine how they received the Clinton emails. Of course, the Mueller team could not risk WikiLeaks saying the emails were not received from Russia, which would destroy their Russia-hacked DNC fairy tale. CrowdStrike's new efforts to save face. Yesterday, we discovered that CrowdStrike has reportedly obtained a PR firm to help backtrack their bogus claims. A week ago, Personal Liberty ran a wire story originally published in the Los Angeles Times. In the article, editors' notes were added in places where the LA Times piece reported fake news. One of the editor's notes concerned the MSM trope that Russia intelligence operatives stole and released thousands of emails and other documents in an effort to boost Trump's chances, according to the U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies. The editor's note was as follows: "This is fake news. While it's oft repeated by the propagandists in the MSM legacy corporate media, there is no evidence that the emails were stolen and released by Russian intelligence operatives. The emails were released by WikiLeaks and an entity called Guccifer 2.0. WikiLeaks denies it got them from any Russians, and Julian Assange has hinted that they were stolen by murdered DNC operative Seth Rich. The FBI was denied access to the emails, and the conclusion that they were stolen and released by, quote, Russian intelligence operatives was made by the DNC-hired cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike, which has ties to Ukrainian oligarchs and the Council on Foreign Relations." A few days later, this past Tuesday, Personal Liberty reportedly received an email from John Eddy, executive vice president of the PR firm Golden. The email follows: "My firm works with CrowdStrike, and we read your article titled 'Trump Seeks to Boost Sanders and Foment Discord Among Democrats.' We need to request important updates to the article. The article states that the FBI was denied access to the emails, and the conclusion that they were stolen and released by Russian intelligence operatives was made by the DNC-hired cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike, which has ties to Ukrainian oligarchs and the Council on Foreign Relations. This is incorrect. CrowdStrike's founders have no connections to Ukraine. The company also provided all forensic evidence and analysis to the FBI that they requested, and the conclusions have been fully supported by the U.S. intelligence community. Additionally, CrowdStrike was hired by the DNC to respond to the suspected breach of its servers and did not do any investigations around the release of the information. Could you please update the article for accuracy to clarify that CrowdStrike does not have ties to Ukraine and that the company was hired by the DNC to investigate the hack of the servers?" Note the phrase from CrowdStrike's PR firm stating that CrowdStrike did not do any investigations around the release of the information. Update: We contacted the CrowdStrike's PR firm Golden Solutions, and they confirmed their email to Personal Liberty. Now, after 3.5 years of fraudulent Russia collusion scam being repeated so often that half of America believes that Russia hacked the DNC and gave their emails to WikiLeaks, CrowdStrike announces that it had nothing to do with assessing that Russians gave the emails to WikiLeaks. So why is CrowdStrike announcing this now? Are they liable for fraud by not announcing this years ago? Their lack of response allowed the coup against the President of the United States to progress. If they didn't confirm the Russians gave the emails to WikiLeaks, then who did? The Mueller report clearly states that Russians hacked the DNC and gave the hacked emails to WikiLeaks. So if CrowdStrike now claims they didn't confirm that Russians gave emails to WikiLeaks, then who the hell did? We believe that both Mueller and CrowdStrike are lacking candor. So what they've done here is they've forced CrowdStrike. I think actually they got this PR firm on their heels. They were trying to be offensive and they ended up messing up. but they've closed the circle of where they're punting the football. So now CrowdStrike didn't do the investigation of the actual servers. The DNC and HRC didn't do the investigation of the actual servers, and the FBI didn't do the investigation of the actual servers, and yet somehow the entire Mueller report talks about the investigation of the actual servers. And CrowdStrike lies. I mean, this was mentioned in the Gateway Pundit article. This is back in 2017. This was, right in the thick of things. And basically, what they had to do was so cyber firm rewrites part of disputed Russian hacking report. The use of Fancy Bear Android malware in tracking of Ukrainian field artillery units. Okay, so Fancy Bear is the same malware that they said they identified on the DNC and HRC servers. Cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike has revised and retracted statements it used to buttress claims of Russian hacking during last year's American presidential election campaign. The shift followed a VOA report that the company misrepresented data published by an influential British think tank. In December, CrowdStrike said it found evidence that Russians hacked into a Ukrainian artillery app, contributing to heavy losses of howitzers in Ukrainians' war with pro-Russian separatists. VOA reported Tuesday that the International Institute for Strategic Studies, which publishes an annual reference estimating the strength of world armed forces, disavowed the CrowdStrike report and said it had never been contacted by the company. Ukraine's Minister of Defense also stated that the combat losses and the hacking never happened. Some see overblown allegations. CrowdStrike was first to link hacks of Democratic Party computers to Russian actors last year. Okay, this is in 2017. In 2019, they're now saying they never made those links. CrowdStrike was first to link hacks of Democratic Party computers to Russian actors last year, but some cybersecurity experts have questioned its evidence, and obviously with good reason, because now in 2020 they've fully retracted. The company has come under fire from some Republicans who say charges of Kremlin meddling in the election are overblown. CrowdStrike co-founder and CTO Dmitry Alper. After CrowdStrike released its Ukraine report, company co-founder Dmitry Alperovich claimed it provided added evidence of Russian election interference. In both hacks, he said, the company found malware used by, quote, Fancy Bear, a group with ties to Russian intelligence agencies. CrowdStrike's claims of heavy Ukrainian artillery losses were widely circulated in the U.S. media. On Thursday, CrowdStrike walked back key parts of its Ukraine report. The company removed language that said Ukraine's artillery lost 80% of the Soviet-era D-30 howitzers, which used aiming software that purportedly was hacked. Instead, the revised report cites figures of 15 to 20% losses in combat operations, attributing the figures to the IISS. The original CrowdStrike report was dated December 22, 2016, and the updated report was dated March 23, 2017. The company also removed language saying that Ukraine's howitzers suffered the highest percentage of loss of any artillery pieces in Ukraine's arsenal. Finally, CrowdStrike deleted a statement saying, deployment of this malware-infected application may have contributed to the high-loss nature of this platform, meaning the howitzers, and excised a link sourcing its IISS data to a blogger in Russian-occupied Crimea. In an email, CrowdStrike spokeswoman Lena Dimitrova said the new estimates in Ukrainian artillery losses resulted from conversations with Henry Boyd, an IISS research associate for defense and military analysis. She declined to say what prompted the contact. CrowdStrike defends report. This update does not in any way impact the core premise of the report that Fancy Bear threat actor implanted malware into a D30 targeting application developed by a Ukrainian military officer, Dmitry wrote. Reached by VOA, the IISS confirmed providing CrowdStrike with new information about combat losses, but declined to comment on CrowdStrike's hacking assertions. We don't think the current version of the CrowdStrike report draws conclusions with regard to our data, other than quoting the clarification we provided them. Dimitrova noted that the FBI and the U.S. intelligence community have also concluded that Russia was behind the hacks of the Democratic National Committee. See, this in the email account of John Podesta and Hillary Clinton's campaign manager. Okay, see, here's the problem. See, Dimitrova here is saying, well, yeah, our evidence is, sketchy at best, but the FBI and the U.S. intelligence community, they came to the same conclusion we did. And then when we go to the FBI and the intelligence community and we ask them, and they say, well, we never actually got the servers, and CrowdStrike is the one who analyzed it, and that's good enough for us. That's a pretty ugly circle. So we have the DOJ is dropping the charges on the supposed Russian troll farm that just didn't exist. We have CrowdStrike backing away from its claims that they are the ones who analyzed the servers and determined that it was Russians that had hacked the servers. And now, the FISA court. FISA court bars FBI officials involved in Carter Page spy warrants from seeking surveillance. The DOJ and FBI officials involved in the wiretapping of Trump's former campaign advisor Carter Page have been barred from seeking surveillance. Presiding FISA Judge James Boasberg on Wednesday issued a new rule in a 19-page order. There is thus little doubt that the government breached its duty of candor to the court with respect to those applications, Boasberg wrote. The FBI personnel under disciplinary review in relation to their work on the FISA applications accordingly should not participate in drafting, verifying, reviewing, or submitting such applications to the court while the review is pending. The same prohibition applies to any DOJ attorney under disciplinary review, as well as any DOJ or FBI personnel who are the subject of a criminal referral related to their work on FISA applications. In December, DOJ IG Horowitz released a FISA abuse report revealing the FBI made 17. We all know that number, right? 17. What letter is that? Anyways, in December, DOJ Horowitz released an FBI abuse report revealing the FBI made 17 significant errors and omissions when seeking the Carter Page wiretaps. In total, the appendix to Horowitz's report identified a total of 51 Woods procedures violations by Comey's FBI. The Woods procedures were designed to protect American citizens to ensure accuracy with regard to the facts supporting probable cause, after recurring abuses where the FBI presented inaccurate information to the FISC. It basically meant that they were supposed to also give exculpatory evidence to the court, which they withheld all exculpatory evidence from the court. FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith and the FBI counterintelligence investigator Stephen Soma, recently identified as Case Agent 1, mentioned in Horowitz's report, are likely included in the group of officials banned from seeking surveillance matters. Kevin Kleinsmith, who is currently under criminal investigation by John Durham, altered a document to say Carter Page was not a source for the CIA when he was a source for the CIA. Do we understand that? All right. Let's think about this clearly. When Crossfire Hurricane launched, they made moves on General Flynn, an American patriot, and Carter Page, another American patriot who worked for no money willingly for the CIA. And when it came time for them to pick somebody to use to surveil Trump, because they can hop from Carter Page to basically anyone, they chose Carter Page, a young man who was already serving his country by giving information to the CIA willingly. And how much do you want to bet George Papadopoulos was doing the same? Stephen Soma did not tell the FISA court that Carter Page had a prior relationship with the CIA and also withheld exculpatory information. This order from Judge Boasberg does not go far enough. These FBI and DOJ officials who illegally obtained wiretaps on Carter Page should not only be banned from seeking surveillance, they should be prosecuted and imprisoned. I agree. But I really feel like that the people who should really be put in prison are the ones at the top. And I'll tell you guys this right now. John Durham, he's interviewed all of these chuckleheads he's interviewed all these chuckleheads except James Clapper and John Brennan. Now, I don't know how to really explain this to people who've never been in the situation, but let's imagine for a second you're a criminal and you did something wrong. You and your friends, y'all did something wrong. And then all of a sudden the cops are investigating all of you. And you and the other guy, you guys are the two heads of the whole thing. You guys thought the whole thing out, and you're the big planners of the whole conspiracy. And you see in the newspaper that, one of the guys in your conspiracy got pulled into the office and he debriefed with the cops. And then he was released. And then you see that another one of the guys, he's getting some charges for some minor crimes dropped. Well, why would they be dropping charges on him about other crimes unless he was informing on you? And then you see another guy gets charges that are lesser charges dropped. So if you're Clapper and you're Brennan and you're seeing Andy McCabe get let go on these lesser charges and you're seeing Comey get let go on these lesser charges, and everybody's been interviewed except for you, and John Brennan is the only one that had his clearance revoked. I'm in the dock here. I promise you, James Clapper and especially John Brennan are in a very lonely, scary place. So we've got the DOJ admitting that the Russia troll farm was unprosecutable and unprovable, and they dropped the charges. We've got CrowdStrike saying that they never conducted the investigation that determined it was Russians that hacked the server, and backing away from prior claims using the same methodology that they used to supposedly investigate the server that they now claim they didn't investigate. We have the FISA courts barring any Justice Department and FBI officials that were involved in the Carter Page FISA applications. And we have General Flynn's attorney files brief to dismiss case for, quote, egregious government misconduct. Why? Because that woman right there is Sidney Powell, and she is a true American badass. Former National Security Advisor Army Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's defense team filed a brief Tuesday with the court, asking once again to have Flynn's case dismissed based on the court's authority and the government's outrageous conduct and repeated Brady violations, that is, withholding exculpatory evidence. The 19-page brief submitted by Flynn's attorney Sidney Powell comes on the heels of the appointment of Attorney General William Barr to chief federal prosecutor from the 19-page brief submitted by Flynn's attorney Sidney Powell comes on the heels of the appointment by Attorney General William Barr of chief federal prosecutor from St. Louis, Jeffrey Jensen, to review the ongoing case against Flynn. According to reports, an official with the DOJ said Jensen was selected weeks ago by Barr and is expected to review issues raised by Flynn's defense team. We hope the government will seriously consider this brief and our prior briefing from the independent perspective Mr. Jensen can provide and take the steps to remedy this injustice and restore rule of law, Powell told Sarah A. Carter. Powell also stated that Flynn had been lied to by the FBI, leading Flynn to believe in the early stages of the Bureau's probe that he was not under investigation, just like they told Trump. Jensen's role will be a crucial part of Flynn's overall case and accusations that prosecutors engaged in misconduct. Further evidence revealed the DOJ's Inspector General's report regarding Flynn substantiates concerns brought forth by Powell that her client was forced into pleading guilty and that information has been knowingly withheld by prosecutors from the defense. Flynn, who originally pleaded guilty in 2017 to one count of lying to the FBI, withdrew his guilty plea in mid-January, stating to the court that he was coerced into the plea by prosecutors who threatened they would retaliate by going after his son, Michael Flynn Jr., who had previously worked with him at his former business, the Flynn Intel Group. When the FBI agents came to the White House on January 24, 2017, I did not lie to them, said Flynn. I believed I was honest with them to the best of my recollection at the time. I still don't remember if I discussed sanctions on a phone call with Ambassador Sergei Kislyak, nor do I remember if we discussed the details of a UN vote on Israel. Flynn stated that he would have never had pled guilty if the FBI would have been straightforward with him about the interview, and the fact that the two agents believed he did not lie as well. Both FBI officials stated that Flynn had a sure demeanor and did not give any indication of deception. Moreover, Powell stated in an explosive revelation in January that the FBI's first 302 interview with Flynn has never been produced by the government. The 302 document is basically the FBI's report on its interview with Flynn, which the FBI should be forced to record, tape record or video record all interviews. That is ridiculous. In Tuesday's brief, Powell argues that there are two bases on which the court could dismiss Mr. Flynn's case. The first is when there has been a due process violation, and the second is an exercise of a federal court's supervisory authority. Powell argues both are applicable to Flynn's case. She argues in her brief that after more than 2 years of the court's order to turn over evidence to the defense, she discovered from a stunning report of the Inspector General that one of the two FBI agents, who broke all protocols to interview Mr. Flynn in the White House on January 24, 2017, was surreptitious participant in a presidential briefing on August 17, 2016. Basically, the FBI sent agents not to brief President Donald Trump, but to actually participate in spying on him, as well as members of his campaign, based on the IG report's findings. The information Powell was referring to was the fact that the FBI had approved agents to spy on Flynn as early as August 2016 during the presidential briefing, and did so to prepare themselves for a possible future interview if Flynn and Trump won the election. Trump won, and the FBI proceeded with its plans to interview Flynn in January 2017. However, the information was never revealed to Flynn's defense team. She noted that the FBI had assigned him in August 2016, specifically to collect information from and about Mr. Flynn to give the FBI further advantage and insights into the agent's plan to interview Mr. Flynn in the White House if Trump won the election. Further, the IG report revealed conduct of this agent and in the highest tiers of the FBI that is indeed so grossly shocking and so outrageous as to violate the universal sense of justice. She argues that the FBI agent referred to in IG Michael Horowitz's report as SSA-1 was inserted into a presidential briefing because Mr. Flynn was attending to gain assessment and possibly some level of familiarity with Flynn and to have something to fall back on in the event that FBI decided to interview Mr. Flynn directly. The fact that government prosecutors withheld such vital information from Flynn's defense, Powell argued, is reason enough to dismiss. It was material to Mr. Flynn's defense every day from January 24, 2017 to the day this court entered its Brady order, ECF number 20, and it was material for every day of the 305 days from the time this court entered that order until Mr. Flynn appeared before this court on December 18, 2018, ostensibly to be sentenced, Powell said in her brief. She argues that had Flynn been sentenced originally on December 18, 2018, he would have been serving time, while the government prosecutor, Brandon Van Grack, hid this extraordinary information that not only magnifies by 10 the importance of the SSA-1's assessment of Mr. Flynn's honesty, but also invites an unprecedented act of investigatory intrusion into a trusted presidential briefing. And of course, the story here is that we have another outside prosecutor assigned by Barr to another aspect of the Russia collusion case, the FISA breaches, the spying on Trump, and the lying to Congress. Remember, Durham also asked for a second prosecutor and got one. So we have 3 prosecutors running right now that we know of, and we have several prosecutors running that we don't know about because we read in these things that there are other indictments that are running concurrently. And if you guys have lost heart and you don't feel like anything's going to happen, I really want you to hear a few minutes of Sidney Powell. She really is inspiring. So let me play you a little bit of her.
Just a brief timeline of what went on there. It was August 15, 2016 that we have the Page Strzok text messages, the 2 illicit FBI lovers that were having affairs, even though one was a counterintelligence agent and one was special counsel to Deputy Director McCabe. Not to mention over 50,000 text messages between the 2 of them. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out when they had time to work. And we've only seen a few of the text messages between them. The government, that's another thing they're hiding. They have not produced all the Strzok Page text messages, even all the ones that relate to General Flynn. But they were doing this, and on August 15 is when they text each other about the infamous insurance policy. We just discussed this in McCabe's office. It's like an insurance policy in the event that Trump is elected. August 16 is when they open the investigation against General Flynn. And August 17, the very next day, is when this agent, whose name I can't reveal, although the entire public, I think, knows who he is, but I've seen it under a protective order, so I can't tell you his name. But he goes into that presidential daily briefing to assess General Flynn, specifically in the event they need to interview him later as a subject. The FBI actually cleared him completely of any offense, and there's a memo to that effect held within the Department of Justice dated January 30, 2017. That's while he was still in the White House. It exonerates him of being an agent of Russia. The agents reported back immediately on January 24th, doing 3 separate briefings of an hour each to all the upper echelon of DOJ and the FBI that they thought he was being honest. He showed no signs of lying. They believed him. And so they write that memo, and it's in the DOJ file. I still haven't been able to get Judge Emmett Sullivan to produce that to the defense. The government refuses to give it to us. They say, oh, it really doesn't matter because that doesn't have anything to do with the false statements he made on January 24th, 6 days earlier. Well, it has everything to do with it, and most people can see that. It starts in the book with the Enron task force, which was created by President Bush and untethered from the Department of Justice, a group of hand-picked prosecutors by Michael Chertoff and Larry Thompson and Bob Mueller. Sadly, they picked them because they were terrorists of prosecutors. That's not what a federal prosecutor is supposed to be. There is a Supreme Court decision called Berger versus United States that describes the role of a U.S. attorney or assistant U.S. attorney as being a representative of the sovereign whose job is to seek justice, not convictions. Any U.S. attorney I worked with or for said your job is to do the right thing. You know, make sure before you indict somebody that they're actually guilty, that it's a real crime. We don't need to stretch the law. We just need to enforce it. And that's what we did. Nobody ever chastised me for losing a jury trial, and I lost several. No one ever chastised me for what's called confessing error, which means sometimes as the appellate lawyer for the appellate section in San Antonio or Northern District, Texas, I had to go in and admit to the Fifth Circuit that the agents or the trial attorneys had done something wrong, that they had blown the case in some way and the conviction had to be reversed. The government doesn't do that now. They don't seem to have done that much, if any, in the last 20 years. And I don't know why that is. There has been an extraordinary change in the culture of the FBI and the Department of Justice that must be reversed. And the time to reverse that is right now. If we don't reinstate the rule of law right now, our republic is going to be gone. I mean, that's how serious it is. At least 100 million people in the country see the two-tiered system we have. If you're a Republican, you're going to prison for years. If you're a Democrat, you get a pass. You don't have to look any farther than the special counsel's indictment of Paul Manafort, which whatever Manafort's real crimes were, and apparently there were some real tax crimes charged against him, the indictment also includes person A or B, I think, who was Tony Podesta, who committed some of the exact same offenses Mr. Manafort did, if not more. But was Tony Podesta indicted? No. Tony Podesta just closed down one company and went to start another or do something else. But he wasn't prosecuted at all. He was given a pass. And everyone can see the extraordinary crimes committed by Hillary Clinton that were actual offenses, like destroying the BlackBerries and destroying hundreds of thousands of emails, and absolutely nothing was done. Immunity was handed out to her colleagues as if it was Halloween candy. And at the same time, 2 years later, everyone related to President Trump is indicted, have to sell their houses to pay legal fees, take out third mortgages to pay legal fees, and go to prison. We cannot survive as a republic with dual standards like that, and it's absolute death for the rule of law. Who was it, Obama, who said elections have consequences? Well, hopefully the election of President Trump and the mandatory re-election of President Trump, if we're going to save the republic, will result in even more favorable changes, whether anyone else likes it or not, because the time is now. We simply cannot wait any longer. I mean, I saw the train coming. I didn't realize it would be coming at President Trump when I wrote License to Lie, but I was really glad that I published it in 2014 so that there was a warning ahead of time about what was going on. And then I knew as soon as I heard the Russia hoax and all that, and Mueller picked Weissman for his task force, exactly what was going to happen. In fact, Manafort's defense team said License to Lie. They read it because they knew it was Mueller's handbook, his playbook. In fact, we haven't even been able to get the original 302, which somehow is missing, despite the fact it goes into the FBI's Sentinel system and cannot be missing. I hope the first thing Mr. Jensen does is insist that Brandon Van Grack, the prosecutor in our case, produces to him the original 302 and the audit trail that is always in the FBI's Sentinel system, because I think if he does that, and it would only take about 48 hours, he will see, for one reason or another, this case has to be dismissed. We've already shown evidence that they literally made major modifications to the 302 between the nights of February 10th and 11th, which happens to be the same time they showed the transcripts of the Flynn-Kislyak call to Vice President Pence. And Lisa Page instructed Peter Strzok to make the changes she had left on somebody's chair, and they added sentences into the 302 that weren't even reflected or referred to in their notes at all. We've got a problem with our federal judges too. It crosses both political boundaries. License to Lie crosses Republican and Democratic administrations. It's only gotten worse. We are operating from a defense fund. It's the MikeFlynnDefenseFund.org. And the generosity of the American people has been very impressive. Putting together the false charges that they put together against General Flynn is in itself obstruction of justice. Falsifying the Carter Page email that they used to get the warrant is obstruction of justice. The Department of Justice is going to have to start prosecuting some of its own by the same standards it seeks to hold the rest of us. And I'm hopeful that we're going to see developments along those lines very shortly. Attorney General Sessions is a good person, but he was not equipped to do that job. He allowed the career prosecutors, some of whom have recently left the department, to persuade him that it would be an ethical violation for him to continue just because he'd shaken hands with Ambassador Kislyak. And in a pass-through social situation, I think it was. That was ridiculous. He should not have recused. If he was going to recuse, I think at the very least he should have told the president he felt that way before he took the job, because it's essentially left us in the quagmire we've been in with the Mueller investigation. Of course, I also blame Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, who apparently just completely fell apart at the thought of it all, and that's why he punted to special counsel. Either that or he was completely in on it, but none of it was right. There should never have been a special counsel appointed. There was no investigatory validity to hand off to a special counsel. They knew that, and the reason we have the prosecution of General Flynn, I'm convinced, is to maintain the obstruction hoax to allow it to go forward for 2 years, because Mueller knew within a day or two there was no Russia collusion. The FBI had already been investigating it and trying to create it for 6 months and hadn't even been able to do that. But when Comey went to the White House on February 14th, which was the day after General Flynn left, he had that conversation with the president in which the president said, well, I hope you can see to let this thing go. Flynn's a really good guy. And then Comey runs out and creates one of his famous Dear Diary memos and says, that's obstruction of justice. And he starts, breeding the whole obstruction of justice theory, when what he should have told the president before February 14th even was that they had investigated Flynn and cleared him of everything. The agents believed he was telling the truth. There were no lies in the January 24th meeting. And they had written a memo to DOJ on the 30th of January that he was not an agent of Russia, which was a ridiculous assertion in the first place. What they also failed to mention and will not give me are his briefings and debriefings with the Defense Intelligence Agency, for whom he continued to work as a citizen after he left the agency. He briefed and debriefed and collected information for our government when he went to Russia and gave it to them. They knew about every foreign contact he had because he was keeping them informed of it. He kept his security clearance. It's just mind-boggling that they've gotten by with this long. Absolutely mind-boggling and terrifying, because there, but for the grace of God, goes any one of us. The McCabe issue. I read the declination on McCabe. It's a very narrow issue. They've only declined to prosecute him on the statements about his leaks to the Wall Street Journal. I am okay with that because I think they are looking at McCabe with a much bigger fish to fry. And I have heard that there are 2 sealed indictments waiting in the wings. I'm not sure what they're waiting for. At first, I would have assumed that they were definitely waiting for the ridiculous impeachment issue to be over. But I'm not sure now what the answer to that might be, other than maybe some people are trying to make a deal. But I think we will see some indictments within the next few months of the people who really need to be indicted. And I wrote an article for the New York Observer ages ago called "The Countless Crimes of Hillary Clinton" that went viral. There are probably things she could still be indicted for, and frankly, I think should, because the Espionage Act, very clear violations of the Espionage Act, and really no issue about intent, despite President Obama proclaiming otherwise. And of course, you realize the reason that Hillary had to be protected was because he was writing her on that secret server using an alias, which shows that he damn well knew and had approved in advance her use of the secret unsecured server. On top of that, there's the Anthony Weiner laptop, which I don't know if you heard this. I wrote an article about that too. 675,000 Clinton emails when they got Anthony Weiner's laptop in a search warrant because of all his sex perversion issues. It was all the Clinton emails, the Clinton Foundation, her Secretary of State emails, Huma Abedin's emails. Lots of people emailed Huma as a proxy for Hillary, and it included what Comey called the sorry, I must wave my hands more than most people. The golden emails, because they were the BlackBerry backup emails that they were supposedly just looking for everywhere very diligently. Well, guess what they did when they found them on the Weiner laptop? They got a search warrant for things that didn't include the BlackBerry backup emails. So when they told us, when he stood there and said that day, oh, we've reviewed all the emails now, there's nothing there, that was a bald-faced lie. They specifically did not look at the BlackBerry backups, and they didn't look at a fraction of the emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop. So one of the things, if I were the president, I'd do is demand the Anthony Weiner laptop and get it to the most trusted person in the military to take apart everything on it and then start using it. There's a lot that can be prosecuted, I have no doubt, on that laptop. In fact, I heard that the New York police officers who saw some of it, even though they're hardened investigators, literally had to go throw up. It's bad. They've had so much power and gotten by with it for so long, and they're so narcissistic, their hubris is just beyond bounds. They can't even fathom. I mean, Comey, I don't know what to say about Comey. I mean, really, the man is so full of himself and unfounded self-righteousness and hubris. he thinks he's untouchable and has done nothing wrong when he almost destroyed the entire FBI single-handedly. Its reputation, it will take years to recover. It's got to be rebuilt from the ground up because it's really 20 years at least of that attitude. Mueller had it and Comey had it, and that covers 16 years or more. So it's got to be rebuilt from the ground up and people trained to restore fidelity, bravery, and integrity. The key word there being integrity. Because if our law enforcement agents and agencies are not completely honest, we are lost. So I really can't comment on the validity of the case. I can tell you that they rushed to indict him. I can certainly tell you that the way they arrested him is an egregious abuse of power. Absolutely appalling. The same thing they did to Paul Manafort. They literally, went into his house in the dark of night with his family and wife sleeping in the bed. They searched his wife at gunpoint in their bed in her nightgown. I mean, can you men even imagine that happening in your homes and having to lay there powerless and watch as FBI agents searched your wife in her nightgown in the bed? It was egregious. And they should be punished just for that. I mean, the director of the FBI can certainly set a policy, and he is responsible for that because those FBI agents were still under his authority. He's on TV complaining about how they don't have money because, if you'll recall, it happened during the government shutdown. But that didn't stop them from sending 16 vehicles, a boat, frogmen, and a helicopter to go get Roger Stone, who would have walked in the next morning with his sunglasses and hat on and surrendered. The 4 prosecutors that resigned haven't resigned far enough. Only one of them is leaving the department. The others are still part of the department or a U.S. Attorney's office. There are still any number of Mueller people in the department and in the FBI. Probably every FBI agent that was involved in that needs to be scrutinized carefully and assigned to help improve things in Alaska or an Indian reservation or something like that. They all, well, Christopher Wray admitted the other day in his testimony that every agent who's mentioned in the Inspector General's 475-page report on the FISA abuses is under investigation. Yeah, I think some will see jail time. I think the ones at the top will see jail time.
Sidney Powell knows what she's talking about, and she sees what's coming down the road. And she thinks that there's going to have to be prosecutions and there's going to have to be jail time. Now, she's a defense attorney at heart, not a prosecutor at heart. So she is going to be never-endingly positive. But I'm starting to think I have to agree with her. And I'm not saying that the disease that shall not be named is being ran right now so that they can back away from the Russia collusion narrative. I'm just saying that they're using the coronavirus right now to back away from the Russia collusion narrative. It's these stories that just kind of creep out there underneath the main headline of this thing that has been dubbed the invisible enemy that is sucking up all the air in the room. And it's not just the cabal who's going to take advantage of this. Every group out there will take advantage of it. Trump, it will take advantage of it. If I can just explain my own view on this real quick so that, we're clear. I have a few hundred subscribers now. I think that we've been dealing with one cabal for my entire lifetime, and it's shown us a two-party dichotomy, and they've all been working for the same cabal. This is, let's just start with Bush Senior. And so we look at Bush Senior and all the way up until it was supposed to be Hillary and Jeb Bush. That was supposed to be the election that year. And when Trump eviscerated Jeb Bush on the stage, I remember the next day the media and the politicians and the pundits, they all freaked out because it was the first time when they realized that Jeb wasn't going to be the guy, and they didn't know who was going to be the guy, and they've been scrambling ever since. Trump, to me, represents what I will just call a different faction of elites. He's a billionaire. He has connections to other countries that can sometimes be very demanding of politicians, and he has made many of the same decisions as all of the presidents that have come from the previous cabal, and he's made some different decisions. And it's clear from his policy that he does not want China as the central manufacturing hub of the world. It's clear that he wants America to be self-sufficient. It's clear that he wants other nations to also be self-sufficient and strong so that we can have strong trade. He doesn't want a giant welfare system. There will be another group that coalesces around him. They already have. Jared Kushner is the guy to follow. So when we get excited about one or the other or this or that, we got particularly excited about Trump because it was clear from the immediate reaction by the media, both sides of the aisle. I mean, your kindergarten teacher, everybody universally hated him all of a sudden and wanted him nothing to do with him. And for any truther, that perked our ears up, because anytime there's universal hatred of a person, or anytime there's universal anything, if both sides are getting together on something, you need to be paying attention to it. And so we realized that Trump wasn't part of this in crowd, and he's not. But that doesn't mean he is not part of an in crowd. He is just another billionaire in control of our country, in control of the special interests, in control of the bureaucracy. And I do like a lot of things that Trump is doing, but I don't like some of the things that he's doing. And we're going to talk about this more in my next episode, because we're kind of at a tipping point here where, Trump is either everything he says he is and more than half of what Q says he is, or he really deceived a lot of people. And I don't see much gray area in between those two options. And we're going to know that in the coming future. But anyways, guys, I just wanted to show you that I noticed in the media that they're backing away from the Russia collusion narrative in several different ways. And I feel like everybody's hunkering down and trying to avoid as much prosecution and as much liability as possible. We'll see how it all shakes out. But I like to always remind people when I'm covering this that Every name I've talked about on this entire episode has their senior executive service. And I don't see any real reform coming out of the FBI until Director Wray is replaced. Director Wray is the Jeff Sessions of the FBI. He needs to go. Thanks for subscribing. If you haven't, subscribe. Throw me a thumbs up. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subs so that I can, have some more options opened up to me. I can produce better video. I can maybe do some live streaming. Leave your leave your comments, your thoughts below. I enjoy them. I try to answer as many as I can. I'm still new at this, so some of my presentations are not presenting exactly what I'm trying to get across, and I'm hoping I'll get better at that as time goes by. But if you have any questions regarding a position that I take or a claim that I make in any of my videos, just ask it in the comments so I can clarify. But anyways, stay safe, you guys. Do not live in fear. Keep your vibrational energy out of that low fear vibration, because it opens you up to things. And love your neighbor. Go say hi to them. Take a walk. And I'll talk to you guys next time. I'm out.